Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee Books and Rain. I'm Rachel with my coffee, though I am reaching the bottom of my glass, so sad for us, but it's okay. It's probably about 6:15 at night as I'm recording this, and it's decaf coffee anyway, so don't worry. I will still be going to bed at an unreasonably early time. I know. I'm just odd like that sometimes. But let's talk about The Thread of Destiny by Aimee Lim, The Spindle of Fate number 2. Now, I picked up this first one a little while back, and I want to say it might have been last year, and it was really cute. It's got some Chinese lore involved in it, and her mother was a weaver who was murdered, and so Evie is she decides to I don't want to say decides to take it upon herself, but she wants to figure out what happened, and she starts to uncover some things about her mom's past, where so her mom was part of these guilds, kind of had this magical ability that Evie didn't know anything about. There's a lot of secrets about her mom that Evie kind of learns after the fact. So in a lot of different ways, Evie's kind of hurt that she is learning about her mom after her mom is already gone. And so let us just go ahead from there. We are now just now the book that book came out, like I said, somewhere around maybe last year. This book takes place 2 weeks after the events of the previous book. So, about 2 weeks after in their world time, do we actually get this installment. So, let us dive into the summary. Full of grotesque monsters and revenge, Evie May's journey to confront her mother's killer comes to an end in this middle grade novel from Aimee Lim. Evie May has literally been to hell and back, and while the trip to Dayu, the Chinese underworld, and I do apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly, alongside Kevin was a grueling feat filled with endless horrors, nothing compares to the fact that she was unable to bring her mother back. She now has the great responsibility to assume the role her mother once held. Head weaver in the magical guild. Spinning people's fates sure seemed easier said than done, and now Evie finds herself buried in the guild's duties while trying to maintain a strained relationship with her best friend. What could make a 13-year-old's life even more complicated? Escaped monsters from the underworld that broke through when she returned to Earth? A mysterious yellow fog that seems to be turning the city upside down and hinting at an approaching massive force they aren't prepared to fight. Not to mention the looming man who sent her mother to the underworld in the first place and her aunt's fiancé. Can a girl catch a break? Aimee Lim's fast-paced conclusion to Evie May's story is filled with her signature sardonic voice, explorations of grief and relationships, and the thrilling action that will leave readers rooting for the young girl whose courage outshines everyone. It is middle grade, so I wouldn't even call it YA fantasy. It is definitely considered a middle grade, and it says 288 pages in hardcover. I want to say my e-reader version was probably around 160 pages. Again, I usually have my font pretty small. I can read it really fast. But it says about 288 in hardcover. I do wonder if there's pictures then. Published July 8th of 2025. So I'm about 2 weeks after getting this posted and published and all that sort of fun stuff. But I've had quite a few books going on. Now, I probably give this a 4 star to a 4.25 stars. I do enjoy middle grade. I find that it's comforting, cozy genre to explore. Usually the themes are not as heavy as this one, where it is the parent's death and the grief of the child. However, I think it's very well done in this particular book. I think Evie's had to grow up very quickly in her own personal self, especially being a 13-year-old. just being a new teenager, because when you're 12, you're not a teenager, and when you turn 13, you are officially a teenager. And Evie is just now a teenager. And so she feels as though she never even got the chance to know her mom. And the issue too with that is she feels like her younger sister was closer to her mom. And so Evie feels like she really missed out, because now, I don't want to say Evie's the mom of the family, but now Evie's having to kind of take up a lot of the slack and support her dad with the absence of her mom. So she's having to grow up very fast. And you can definitely tell that Evie's kind of resentful of her childhood kind of being upheaved, the upheaval in her childhood. Not only that, is she has discovered that the gambler, as is referred to in this particular book, is not only her aunt's, like her mom's sister's fiance, but he was the one who ended her mom. And so, but Evie has made a promise to her mom's spirit in the first book that she would do her best to prevent the aunt from like ever finding out that that's what happened, because otherwise the aunt would definitely off him for sure. She would definitely take him out, and she doesn't want that to happen because the aunt is currently pregnant with his child. So there's a little bit of like a lot of bit of angst around that. And so that's a pretty tough situation. Now for a 13-year-old to be able to navigate that is wild. I am not 13 years old. I am well older than that and beyond that age. And I am not sure I could keep my tongue in check to not share that information. If I knew that this person was the reason my mom was no longer here and he is now engaged to my aunt, we're going to have some issues. I'm just saying. We're going to fight. But the way that Evie is so strong and determined to really hold her family together in all the ways she possibly can is really admirable. And I think that's where I also kind of forgot at times while reading it that it was middle grade, because I am just not used to seeing a 13-year-old be that level of responsible. However, now let's flip to the other side of where Evie is really wanting some revenge. She is absolutely still a 13-year-old with a chip on her shoulder and a mom that's no longer with her that she didn't even get the opportunity to bond with. So Evie feels like she has to kind of express her anger in some way. And at pretty much the first guild meeting that Evie goes to, and so now she's the head weaver of this guild, she the whole guild gets kind of like a demon from the underworld kind of barges in and lets them know that this particular staff has gone missing from Dayu, and that it was taken by this particular person who was trapped in Dayu, who is now escaped. So there is an escaped prisoner. And Evie, sadly, knows exactly who it is, because in the first book, we encounter a guy named Larry. And Larry treated Evie pretty good in the first book, like while she was in Dayu. She thought he was her friend. He then took the staff because she let it slip that this staff could break through the walls of Dayu, and then he escapes. So that's exactly what he does, is he escapes. So now Evie feels like she's the one who needs to make this situation right. And I think that would be potentially like part of teenage mindset, is they feel like they've got to do everything and they can't rely on anybody to try and like help them. They like, I think that's where the angst comes in, because I definitely remember being like an angsty teenager, but usually my head was in a book. So if I wasn't writing, I was probably reading and going to school. I didn't do a lot beyond that. Very happy though that we get Kevin, who was in the first book, who had, I think, accompanied her to Dayu. He is back this particular book, and I really, really enjoy the fact that he and Evie are just able to be friends. I didn't think we needed any level of romantic interest between them, and they didn't include it, and I was so happy for that, because I just love seeing a guy and a girl be able to be friends in the platonic way without those romantic, as this person says, romantic undertones. And I'm like, yes. I just like to see it. I don't have to ship every single person that that meets on the page. Like, they don't always have to be in a relationship. But I think Kevin is a great character to accompany Evie, and we do have another character as well who is part of the guild, but she's not one of the like the heads, and I forget what her name is, but she's like this really smart girl, very organized, but she does a lot of like what I would call like the research, and she's kind of like, I don't know if she means to be mean, but she's kind of mean, potentially accidentally. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it. She just is lacking in a lot of tact when it comes to delivering what she's thinking. This book does do a good job of exploring grief from the perspective of this young teenager, because she is at war in a way with herself and some of the choices that she made in the first book, as well as her missing mom, and now having to be here for her sister. And so this individual, and let me just make sure I got it right, Chelsea, she said, it shows a real maturity in understanding her sister's grief and putting her own feelings for a moment. I would say putting her own feelings aside for a moment, while recognizing to herself that she did still love her mom. So it seems as though her sister, Evie's sister, did bond better with the mom. Maybe they had more similar, like, just personalities that meshed a little better. And Evie was always kind of butting heads, if I remember correctly, with her mom. Didn't mean that she didn't love her mom. It just meant that they loved each other differently than the way Evie's sister and the mom kind of bonded. So Evie was then able to kind of better understand, like, from her sister's point of view. So that's pretty good. So I was very surprised at the maturity of this 13-year-old going through this in this particular book. It's not a long book. Again, my ebook was only somewhere around 160 pages, so it felt like it went really fast. And we really are, in my personal thought, trying to get the staff back, trying to help Larry without really condemning him in the ways that, like, a lot of people want to just throw him back and Dayu, but he feels as though, at least to Evie, that he's got some things that he's not, that he needs to address, maybe, but he really, I mean, he's already dead, so technically he doesn't need to be here on the planet anymore. But there is a moment where Evie and her friends do find where Larry is, and the scene where Evie's trying to kind of talk to him, even though it gets interrupted by what seems to be a spectral bear, or demon bear, it felt pretty touching at the moment. So I was pretty impressed with that. Just trying to think. I'm looking at my own personal review at this point. And I did give it 4 stars. I thought 4.25, somewhere around in there is probably the score I would give it. And yeah, there are moments that'll break your heart. I did mention that. When I first read it, they are kind of very heartwarming, very touching, sad, very sad. There's moments of, like, you know, when she's processing grief, so we as the reader kind of see some of that, and it's pretty touching. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I really think that's probably my, like, I think that I don't want to spoil anything more going forward, because then I think we start getting into kind of like the ending of the book, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. So that's why I was trying to think of, like, okay, so what is the build up to what we're trying to do? And I think I've really laid that out pretty well for you all, and kind of the general premise of what we are working with and working through at this particular point. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. I'm going to let you guys go. And so, with all of that being said, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I will see you guys on the next page. I hope you have a great one.